Hi, hi everyone, and welcome to Data Engineers Lunch number 40. Today, I'm going to be going over streaming real-time versus batch for ETL. I am a junior engineer here at Anant and learned a lot making this presentation. So the co-organizers for this event are Raul Singh, Arpan, and myself. We're always looking for speakers and sponsors. So if there is a technology or you're really knowledgeable about something and want to kind of build your resume, speaking here is a great way to kind of promote yourself. You can reach out to Raul, Arpan, or myself, get into contact with us about speaking. We are a part of a larger community here. Data Community DC is a diverse and inclusive culture that supports and celebrates everyone, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, anything like that. And we expect respect to be given to those groups. You can find out more about Data Community DC at their blog, as well as any of their upcoming events. And what we cover here, we cover everything related to data engineering. So ETL, sources, different technologies surrounding data engineering, theories, pretty much everything. And at this point in the introduction, if anyone is new and would like to introduce themselves, first of all, thanks for joining, but also if you would like to unmute and maybe share your camera, let us know what you do with data, that'd be great. Okay, I'll move on. I'm not going to force anyone. Group roles, if you have a question, please ask it. Be polite and courteous to others and share what you know. This is meant to be a discussion and we like to get everyone included. So if there's a point you know more about or have a certain experience with, definitely feel free to speak up. As your speaker today, I don't mind if you just unmute yourself and kind of say hi. Here at Anant, we deal with this kind of thing all the time. So real-time data platforms and architecture is kind of our thing, especially surrounding Cassandra. DataStax is a partner, and more on that here in a little. George Washington University as well has allowed us to use their spaces in the past, and some of the other program sponsors are listed here. If you'd like to sponsor this event, you can get some advertising here as well, and some more organizational sponsors. At this point in the introduction, we'd like, if anyone has any upcoming meetups, jobs, hackathons, anything they'd like to announce, you can use this as an opportunity to promote that. Doesn't seem like it, so we'll move on. One of our own announcements, we are hiring full or part-time positions for data platform operators, engineers, and architects. You can find out more at careers.anant.us. And some upcoming events. Actually, tomorrow, I believe it's Raul, will be doing a 3-part workshop with DataStax, designing and planning a cloud migration. So those 3 weeks of talks will be occurring every Tuesday at, I believe, 12 p.m. Eastern time. So definitely check that out if you've been thinking about doing a cloud migration or, you know, just are curious about how it works. Some upcoming topics we have as well at the Sister Lunch, Apache Cassandra Lunch, which occurs every Wednesday at noon. We'll be covering DataStax, Apache Kafka Connector. And the next Data Engineers Lunch will be going over Akka Serverless. You can find out more about these events at anant.us/events. That's where you'll find the most up-to-date upcoming things we're a part of. So that's it for the introduction. And we'll get into the main presentation. So kind of as I mentioned in the intro, I am a junior engineer, so I'm more new to this. I was interested in learning and taking a deeper dive into kind of what the differences between these two things are and the technologies involved in them. So if any of you guys are more knowledgeable, definitely feel free to contribute, because I am interested to hearing like how people have actually leveraged some of these technologies themselves. So I'll be going over what ETL is, what batch is, what streaming is, some use cases for both, as well as considerations or times when maybe one is better than the other, and then some of the key technologies that are out there. So ETL, I'm sure most of us are familiar, extract, transform, load. So extract, pulling data from the various resources. Transforming is processing that, altering the structure or values in some way, maybe mapping of the data to the source target. So making sure your columns all have the data to move into that database that you're pushing this data to. Validation, and then there's the loading of actually writing the data to the target warehouse, lake, or analytics program. And we're going to take a look at like, where do streams and batch processing come into this, kind of at a higher level. So what is batch? Batch processing is going to be collecting and storing data during a set amount of time, and then processing and acting upon it in set intervals. So you can see here, you can have multiple sources coming in. That batch data kind of loads up, and then, you know, once a day or once an hour, however frequently you need to process that data, it'll be done at these set intervals. I know when I was reading into this, a lot of places typically do this once or twice a day if they're still using batch processing. A lot of companies have started switching to streaming just from the nature of, you know, where the world and data is moving. Those real-time updates are becoming more and more sought after. Some of the drawbacks can be, depending on the amount of data being ingested, can start to put stress on your ETL tools and causing efficiency to fall behind, especially in regards to streaming, where streaming is continuous movement of data from one source to a target or multiple sources, I suppose. And ETL is performed during this process. So this is more like real-time data processing. It happens in some cases, and I guess you say real-time in air quotes because, you know, there is a millisecond's worth of wait, but to us, that's going to be essentially real-time. Stream processing is especially useful in generating reports and dashboards to monitor system performance. We had a talk recently using Grafana dashboard by a guest speaker. And he was showing us like how these granted that was using a time series database and those kind of values, but system monitoring is huge, especially in regards to stream processing, as well as web analytics is another big use case. For batch, as it stands today, is when up-to-date data is not as critical and you're working with a large data set and need to do some heavy processing on it. For example, sorting a whole data set, typically done in batches. Again, this data is not going to be available, so we need to consider that when trying to decide, am I going to use batch or stream? And as I mentioned, the way things are moving these days, streaming is becoming more and more what people want, just because that on-demand nature of the world we live in now. Some use cases for streaming, kind of as I've mentioned, is that real-time updates, software as a service, Internet of Things, machine learning, web analytics, all heavily rely on streaming and having that most up-to-date information. As I mentioned, real-time in quotes, because there is seconds of, or like less than a second of delay. This is also good for analyzing and detecting patterns over time. So monitoring changes or behaviors on a website. Also lends itself to scalability just from the technologies used in streaming. Tend to tend to be able to scale up and down fairly easily. So points, kind of reiterating a point I've already made, which cases do not support batch? So again, that timing, if you can't afford to wait to update your database monitoring system, that sort of thing, batch processing isn't going to be what you want to use. You're going to want to use streaming to get the most up-to-date information. Seeing current data may require looking in multiple systems, and batch can result in bottlenecks, especially when the volume of transactions is increased. It's going to take longer to process those batches. You're going to have to wait for those batches to run. So those would be cases where, again, you'd want to look into streaming as your option. Strain on the processing, I kind of already said that. And delays in the availability can negatively impact the delivery of services. So especially like in things like software as a service, if it's not always up to date, it can cause some frustration. And with streaming, not really, so it wasn't really negatives per se, but it was more so considerations that I found. There's going to be, you may face challenges when you have multiple data sources moving through a distributed system, and you're going to have to really consider the CAP theorem in this. So you have to decide, is your data going to be highly consistent or highly available? A lot of them are as well as like partition tolerance. So you're going to kind of have to make a choice. Like, do I want all this data exactly the same and correct everywhere? But that's going to maybe take more time, reduce your availability, or do you want it available all the time and you're not really caring like how accurate it is? So these are things you need to consider when setting up your stream and what your use case is. So some technologies that support batch, and there's a lot of overlap between the two, right? So data engineering, a lot of the same things can be used to do batch or streaming. So open source Hadoop frameworks are huge for this, Spark and MapReduce, and then for smaller data sets, Informatica and Alteryx were options, as well as Amazon Redshift and Google BigQuery. And you can see with the streaming architecture, you can see some of the same tools are used. There seems to be a lot more now for streaming, and maybe some of you guys could, I'm sure, even point out more that you have used in the past or currently use. I would be interested to find that out from you guys. But you can see Amazon MSK, Kinesis, Apache has a few different technologies involved. So Kafka, Spark, Stormflink, which we've given discussions in the past with demos on some of these technologies. I did link to some of the blog posts that can then subsequently link to the demos. You'll see that in my resources section, and I'll probably add to it. So for streaming or processing, these are kind of the technologies involved there. And then analyzing those stream queries, Amazon Kinesis, Google BigQuery. And then storing, I mean, your options, I didn't even put Cassandra in here. Should have. But Amazon Redshift, Kafka, S3, Google Storage. Really, there's so many more technologies that can be used than I even listed here. So we can have a discussion about that afterwards if you guys would be interested. So some of the resources, as I mentioned, we've done blog posts on NiFi, Airflow, and Spark, connecting Cassandra, Spark foundations, all sort of stuff. And that's kind of the end, well, not kind of, that's pretty much the end of my presentation. I was curious as to if you guys would be interested in a discussion, if anyone's feeling confident and wants to share kind of what have you guys used or what's been your biggest experience when using batch or streaming for your ETL projects. Crickets. If I can call out Obi, if you have, I know you have tons of experience in this. I'm new to the realm, so what's your favorite ETL tool if I can pick on you?
Sorry, I've been in another meeting, so a little bit distracted. But I don't know. There are a lot of good ETL tools for batch processing. I especially like pandas and stuff for working with data that gets used in machine learning. So there are a lot of other considerations to take into account, as well as, you know, stream versus batch, as well as like what file formats go in and out, and sort of, you know, where they connect to, and whether your file formats are usable for anything.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have an experience or, you know, preferences, issues they've run into when streaming or batching data?
Yeah, some few before 2020, I was in charge of building data pipeline using AWS platform. So we tried using Glue, but it did not meet up with our use case. So at the end of the day, we ended up doing ETL kind of from scratch, where we had to extract or query data from Dynamo, then transform it using Lambda, and then save that into RDS. So we did make use of background jobs that will often pick files from S3 and extract the files, extract the data, then save it in RDS. So by the moment, I'm currently looking into ETL tools like Airflow, and I'm trying to see how I can use that alongside with Spark just to study, Kafka just to study and see the different use cases that could be of help. But at the moment, the experience I have is building an ETL workflow from scratch.
Gotcha. Thank you. And it sounds like you are doing that in batches based on your size. Is that correct?
When dealing with files, sometimes we have challenges. Well, we have to deal with memory limits and things like that. So we made use of batches. We had a number of records to extract in order to have the process run smoothly.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Yeah. If you are like looking into Airflow and Spark, you should be able to, if you want to integrate back like Spark streaming into it as part of your ETL process. So that way you could potentially use either, I mean, you could use a experiment.
You're kind of cutting in and out, Arpin, unfortunately.
No problem.
So I'm responding to a direct message, you guys. But if anyone wants to unmute themselves and join in on the discussion, feel free.
Oh, hello everybody. It's nice to meet you guys. This is my first time coming to something like this because I was thinking about being a data engineer. I'm currently working as a DevOps engineer, slowly transitioning to a solution architect. And some of the data engineering skills is very valuable, I think. And I'm currently working on I'm creating a cloud diagram, something to post in Cloud Formation. It's basically a high-powered trading algorithm So I'm using Kinesis data streams, Kinesis data analytics to basically stream in different algorithm outputs. Like I'm using a genetic algorithm. I'm using also another instance that's using a quantum application. So I'm basically planning to send that data to Kinesis, and it's going to transform everything. And I'm trying to find clusters and correlations, and then use AWS machine learning applications to determine the metrics from feature engineering. So I'm trying to like broaden my approach from other data engineers, and I'm trying to learn how they enjoy their job, what they do, and to figure out if it's for me.
That sounds like a very interesting project. And yeah, if any of the other data engineers in the discussion want to give Albert some insight into how data engineering has gone for them, that'd be great. I may start picking on some Anant people. Like Deepan, I know you're fairly new with Anant, but you've been an architect for some time. Do you have any insight for Albert?
No, like I am also a bit new to the engineering concepts, so like I like not yet too confident in sharing what can be done over here, but then maybe we can take it offline and get into a bit more detail and then try to understand what maybe can be done over here.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I guess the presentation itself is kind of over, so we don't have to continue streaming if we want. If some of you guys don't want to be streamed to YouTube and recorded and that sort of thing for your responses.